Let's just talk you through the key moments from yesterday's incident. The victory parade itself began around 2:30 yesterday afternoon.
Just after 6 p.m, as it was drawing to a close, crowds were making their way up Water Street and Dale Street towards the city centre.
So the car was on Dale Street. It was filmed amongst the crowd before eyewitnesses say that the car drove down Dale Street in the direction of the docks, colliding with pedestrians as it went before coming to a stop just before the junction with the Strand there. Well, joining us now is former Metropolitan Police Chief Superintendent Dal Babu, and we'll talk to Andrew and Jonathan in just a moment. But Dal Babu, you've had decades of experience of policing in a major city. I'm not sure if you've ever been involved in a parade, but presumably you've been involved in policing crowds like this. What struck you when you saw what happened yesterday about how somebody was able to get in a car in a huge amount of people where police would have known there were crowds, vulnerable pedestrians? What did you think?
Well, I've never known an incident like this. I've been involved in dozens of parades. London has had a huge amount of success with football teams, and you often, in fact, yesterday, on the day that this incident happened, you actually had Arsenal and you had Crystal Palace parades that went without incident. So London are very, very used to it. But around the country, police forces aren't used to these kind of parades because they expect the success, and you have 500,000, 750,000 people turning up there. So what you have is you have secure cordons, i.e. metal barriers, but because of the route, which could be several miles, sometimes you have softer cordons, i.e. where you've got a police officer that would allow people who live in the local area to cross from one side to the other. What isn't clear at the moment is how that vehicle ended up in the route. So it could, and there's lots of speculations, but there could be a car that was already in the footprint of the route, or it could have travelled in there, and that's what we don't know at the moment.
And just a warning to viewers, obviously we won't show the most distressing scenes, but there will be images that we will show from yesterday which indicate what happened. So police have asked us not to speculate on the motive or, what on earth was going on. But what is remarkable, I think, to people who see the pictures is how somebody was able to get into a vehicle and start driving. There were clearly tons of people walking up that street. So it just seems remarkable that with all the police around, a driver was able to get into the vehicle, start up the engine and move.
Yeah, and I think that's what the investigation will have to try and establish is did this vehicle enter the route and the map of the parade? Was it already in the footprint, and what was happening? And as you said, Susanna, the police have said, please don't speculate. What they have said at their news conference last night, this is not a terrorist incident. They made that very, very clear. And interestingly enough, unprecedented, they gave the race and the ethnicity of the driver. And I think that was, it was Merseyside police who dealt with Southport, that horrific incident where three girls were murdered, where there was a void and social media were filling in the details. So the police were very, very keen to say, look, there was a lot of right-wing tropes on X and media who were saying this is a Islamist attack, it's a terrorist attack. So they made that point explicitly, this is not a terrorist attack.
There was criticism of Merseyside police at the time of Southport. They didn't give enough information quickly enough. Is it a wise decision of the Chief Constable to put out that extra information yesterday? As you say, it's unusual.
Yeah, I think in the circumstances, I think with social media, you have no control. In the old days, I would sit down with a group of journalists and you'd say, look, this is off the record, this is what we're going to tell you. And then the journalists would respect. So, respect whether it's broadcasting or print media, you'd have that relationship with the journalists. I think what you're now getting is that people will speculate, people will be deliberate. Sometimes people will have hundreds and thousands of followers, and they'll say things to sort of ramp things up which are untrue. And actually, I think what was really, really despicable, even because people were sharing these images, and you're thinking actually loved ones may not be aware that their loved ones have been injured in this. But then you had people on there saying, oh, this is a conspiracy. They've said it's a white man who's British. It's a conspiracy. It's not. And they started posting images of somebody who was not involved in the incident. And so I think there's a real, I think that whole X and the unregulated nature of social media is really, really worrying. And I think the police have to act very, very quickly. Ordinarily, they wouldn't share this information, but they've realised, whether it's about Nicola Bulley, that mother who went missing, whether it's more incidents with Southport, you're seeing that the broadcasting media, the print media who are responsible, who take into account all those important issues around fact and so say we're not interested in fake news. When you're on Twitter, those kind of things don't matter. So it's a free-for-all. It
sounds, Dal, as though on that point you're saying that the police releasing the information have made a good call. We're not speculating about the motive of the individual. But the thing I think was very striking yesterday, looking at the early videos, is there were very many police officers who moved very quickly towards the moving car. But you do wonder, if there were all those police officers there, how come somebody got into a car and started to drive it in such a crowded area without the police intervening earlier? That will be a question for the investigation. It will be a question for the investigation, and I think what we don't know, and it's really, really important to avoid that speculation, is, and it shouldn't be about police bashing, because I think the police acted very, very quickly. I think the thing is that vehicle already in the footprint? And in which case, if you're a 7-mile parade, you are inevitably going to be in residential areas where people are living. So city centres have lots of people living there. Is that vehicle already in the footprint? I think that's a key element, and the police will provide that information. I think they've already provided a huge amount of information that they normally don't provide. It's unprecedented for them to say the ethnicity and the race, as I've just said. So I think we'll get that detail as we get further news reports.
Dal Bobby, thank you very much.
Well, Liverpool fans, yesterday was supposed to be a celebration of the club's achievements. Instead, it turned into a scene of a major emergency after a car ploughed into crowds.
Well, Chelsea Ewan was one of those fans out celebrating on the street, saw police racing to the scene. And while she was getting away, the car missed her by just inches. Chelsea is there in Liverpool. Just a warning to viewers, we're about to show scenes from the incident, Chelsea, but, I mean, that warning comes as no comfort to you. You were right there on the scene. Yeah. Just tell us, you're there celebrating this incredible title win, phenomenal moment, tons of people out. You're on this side street, which I would have imagined would feel entirely pedestrianised for the day because of the parade. Tell us what happened.
So after the parade finished, we all decided to come off the Strand, which was where the parade and the bus was finishing the tour. And we decided to walk up to go into the city to try and attempt getting home. So the street that we were walking up was Water Street, which is usually a one-way street for cars to come down. But I assume that the council had taken the roads off for people to have walking access. Because as we were walking up, it was just jam-packed. You couldn't move. We were just walking at such a slow space. So when we were walking, there was not much room around anywhere. And then obviously when the car came plummeting down, it was inevitable it was going to hit people.
Were you walking towards the car as it came down Water Street? Was that the general direction of the travel of the fans?
Yeah, so absolutely everybody was just walking up the street.
Yeah.
So when we heard the beeping of the driver that was coming through the crowds, that's when we looked up and seen the car coming towards us, and we just narrowly missed being hit, and we were able to jump out of the way into as much as safety as we could be. And then unfortunately it carries on and continues into the other people behind us.
Chelsea, you and your family were safe. You weren't harmed, but obviously for you, hugely upsetting moment, which will live with you for a very long time.
Yeah, we were so grateful that we were safe and we weren't hurt, but then we almost feel guilty now that children were hurt and like there was the tragedies is a lot worse than we thought it was at the time. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know whether it was terror or somebody drunk or even somebody that had had a heart attack whilst driving. We just didn't know what it was. So we were angry at first and then scared when we started seeing the people lying on the floor as we continued to walk up the street a bit further.
Yeah, and obviously shocking that 4 people got trapped underneath the car and firefighters had to lift the car off, and one of those people was a child. You know, that makes it so much more upsetting, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is what's so shocking. It is a family event. There was families everywhere. There was prams. There was kids on their dad's shoulders. Although it's an obscene amount of people that have been hurt, seriously hurt, I'm surprised there wasn't more as well. But it hurts more that there was kids involved.
I wonder whether, because you were all walking up the street, the car was coming towards you, at least everyone could see it was coming.
Well, so we weren't actually looking because there was a sea of people in front of us. We couldn't see up the street, although it is a slight incline of the street. You couldn't see in front of you, and so you weren't looking where you're going. You're just walking with the flow of the other people. So the only reason myself and my friend Francesca looked up was because we heard the beeping of the car coming through and the shouting. So if he wasn't beeping, we wouldn't have looked up, we wouldn't have moved out the way, and we would have been hit.
Chelsea, we're speaking to the Merseyside Mayor, Steve Rotherham, after 8 o'clock. And this would have been a terrible incident wherever it happened in the country. But there's something about this happening in Liverpool which feels, you know, even more upsetting, because with football, Liverpool has had such tragedy over recent decades, and it's happened again in Liverpool on a day when everybody was celebrating an amazing Premier League win. Yeah,
I agree. I think, like, Liverpool's such a tight-knit community and everyone sticks up for each other, and whether you're Everton supporter or Liverpool supporter, no matter who, nobody wants this to happen. But at times like this, Liverpool really do stick together and come together as a city, which is something to be proud of.
Absolutely right. Chelsea, I think for a lot of people, they cannot understand simply the logistics of what happened, why there were cars in that road when there were so many fans clearly out and about. The parade had just gone past. Were the cars parked in this area? Were the side streets open that meant that, you know, traffic thought that it was starting to move? We are not speculating on what happened with this particular driver, but did you get the impression that it was just all sort of closed down and that it was a street that you were safely walking up?
Yeah, so obviously it's a main city street in the city, and Water Street is a very busy street, but I feel like the sheer amount of people, we just assumed it was closed off, and it should have been closed off. And as we walked further up, there was railings that was scattered on the floor. Now, I don't know whether them railings were to have the crowd separated or to stop cars coming down. It's common sense that there should have been no cars in the immediate city area. But But looking at the footage that I've seen after the event on Dale Street, there was cars coming up and down. So on Dale Street, it leads onto Water Street. So I don't know why there were cars up there, but there was definitely no cars on Water Street because it was just people. So I don't know whether the cars were just allowed on Dale Street and then it just gone through the railings. I don't know, I'm not too sure. But the road should have absolutely been cornered off just for pedestrians with such a big thing coming to the city.
Absolutely. Chelsea, thank you for being with us this morning. I'm sorry that you were caught up in that, and you know, there must be a good deal of shock for you and your family this morning. We're so glad you're safe, but very distressing for you to then hear more details about what you saw. All the best to you and to all of those caught up in what happened yesterday. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Good morning to you, although a dreadful morning because of what happened yesterday. You were at the parade, weren't you? When did you start to realise that something awful had happened in Water Street?
Well, it's difficult to hear the whole question because there's a vehicle behind me, as you can probably hear, just moving off. I think it was, when did we first find out? And of course, I was in my office, which overlooks Water Street and the Strand. And the phone started to buzz, and immediately I knew by the types of people who were trying to phone me that there was something happening. And then, of course, lots of people in the office, they started to get some of the footage. I mean, almost in the immediacy of what had happened, people were posting footage of the event and of the incident in Water Street, and literally then everything stopped, and we went into the planning mode, which is, you know, who do we need to contact and how do we handle this from our perspective, of course, whilst the police always have primacy in these things.
What seems remarkable is that a car was able to move through an area where there were so many fans. We're not speculating on the motive. Obviously, that's for the police investigation. But were you aware that streets were opening up or that cars had been given, you know, leeway to go down these streets? I mean, have you presumably spoken to police to try and find out how vehicles, which, you know, are so deadly, could have made its way in an area that was so packed?
Of course, I've spoken to the police, and I'm going to allow them the time now to conclude their investigations, and it's really unhelpful to speculate any further on that one. I mean, part of the problem yesterday was that straight away there was a lot of speculation that it wasn't an isolated incident and that there were other things happening in the city, and then all of a sudden it created a bit of panic with some people, and certainly lots of concern, and we tried to, working with the police, ensure that we lock that down as quickly as possible. So I suppose what we're waiting for now is the police to conclude their investigations, which is ongoing behind where I am now, and then Water Street will reopen, and you know, the traffic will be allowed to continue down that route. The police, though, will provide the update when they believe it's the appropriate juncture to do that.
Steve Rotherham, there were praise yesterday for Crystal Palace winning the FA Cup, for Arsenal women winning the Champions League. Obviously, Liverpool winning the Premier League is, you know, one of the great football achievements, but very many of our viewers will be feeling a great kind of sadness today that Liverpool, the city, once again dealing with football-related tragedy. It seems so unfair. What would you say to all of our viewers who've been in touch with us to say how upset they are?
Well, I understand why anybody would be upset. I mean, don't forget there were people in the immediate vicinity of where this incident happened, and so they may well need some support as well, and we're already planning for what we need to do in that instance. There are the immediate concerns, which are those people who are still injured in hospital, and I know you've just spoken to a reporter at Alder Hey, and all of our thoughts should be for them to come through this and then to have a speedy recovery. But look, I get why so many people are genuinely upset by all of this. This was a day of an outpouring of joy, of euphoria, because it was denied to Liverpool fans 5 years ago because it was the COVID times when they won the previous Premiership. So to see, nearly 1 million people on the streets who were just, overjoyed, absolutely in awe of the players as they went past, and then minutes later, in the street that's adjacent to the Strand where that bus had gone through, to see these scenes, and then to obviously to be concerned about the aftermath and those people who are still critically ill. That's the real concern, and I understand therefore that people will still be heartbroken at what's happening, and it does overshadow what was a brilliant day.
It does, doesn't it? Steve Rotherham, we really appreciate your time this morning, the Mayor of Liverpool City Region. Thank you very much, and our hearts go out to all of those involved.